And a very, very warm welcome to you. I'm Nigel A, James, and this is Tram 49. I'm going to call this morning's interview Many Roads to Take. Many Roads to Take. My guest is an interdisciplinary artist, and he's done many, many things, and he's got many, many projects on the go. Deniz Beser, very warm welcome to you.
Hello Nigel. It's really nice to be part of this program.
You've got many, many irons in the fire. Exactly, Deniz, what is an interdisciplinary artist? Just give us a quick summary.
Sure, right. I do painting, video, installation, and music, and also artist books and photocopy magazines. So I mostly combine them in a space. So it's just gonna be the one of the constellation of all of that mediums. So that's why I'm just switching all of that mediums in the space, in the gallery, and in my studio. So that's why I called myself as an interdisciplinary artist.
An interdisciplinary artist. Which one did you start with? How did you get going?
Actually, in the beginning, I just started to work for painting, and then I was making some graphic arts in Fine Arts Academy in Istanbul, Mimar Sinan Fine Arts Academy. I was studying in ceramic and glass design, and also studying painting department in Spain. And also I was always interested of video art, performance art, some installation. So that's why I didn't stop myself only to produce ceramic or painting.
You mentioned Spain, you mentioned Istanbul, and now you're in Vienna. What was the feeling in Istanbul when you were studying art?
Actually, it was a nice experience, but still, when I compare to education system with Spain and Turkey, there are lots of differences. But still, I really had a great time during the Fine Arts Academy.
Deniz, what project are you working on at the moment?
In this moment, we are working on a project called Fanzinist Vienna Art Book and Zine Fair. So that's one of international art book and photocopy magazine fair. So in this year, it will be taking place in Atelier House, Sempo Depot. It's based on independent publications and underground publications. Mostly we will be seeing totally some free publications from art scene.
You say underground. This is a term that's been around for years. What for you is underground? Is it demonstration? Tell us what you think.
I mean, for me, freedom is quite important to speak about our rights, to speak about politics, especially when I was in Turkey. It was really hard topics to talk because when you express yourself, you can find yourself in the prison because of maybe political context. But this kind of publication gives a free space to express about our feelings, and we can always share different kind of information. And there is not a hierarchical system. There isn't an editor or something else. So you can freely express yourself with this type of publications.
You say freely express yourself, but how free are we to express ourselves with this gender situation? You've got to be careful how you call this, how you call that. You're not allowed to call someone a woman, even if they're a woman. You have to put stars and change everything. Isn't this a kind of control coming from down below instead of from top?
Yeah, that's a quite a deep topic actually. And
just tell us briefly what you think.
Yeah, as much as possible, we need to try to keep our senses, and we should be sensitive about the topics, and we need to keep empathy about others, and then that's why maybe we can try to find one of the right approach to understand about us and others. Maybe this is the point that we need to behave, let's say.
You said empathy, but people are becoming really scared of writing because the content they're writing is being edited. They're not allowed really here, not in Turkey, I'm sure in Turkey too. But how do you handle this of having to control your texts, what you've written, to comply with maybe the views of a very, very small minority of people who think this is how it should be?
Actually, I'm not in that writing part. I'm mostly creating visual art. So when I create visual art, I can use some different type of doors, and so this brings some different kind of possibilities to me. But if I write, of course, people maybe can easily understand that context. But when I do painting or when I do some graphic arts, I can use lots of metaphors with that visual forms. So, yeah, I make mostly zines, photocopy magazines about art and some collage. So there is less text than visual images on my publications.
You mention less text and more visual. Is communications in our time becoming totally visual? People don't send letters, they send little emojis, they send pictures everywhere. What do you say to this, and how involved are you in this new kind of direction we're going in?
Yeah, actually, this is a bit tricky times. These contemporary times are a bit hard and easy because we just use some digital platforms, social media, Instagram, TikTok, or another kind of platforms. And for the artists, they can easily share their art and their artistic materials, and they can easily find some different kind of audience from some far countries. And before, there wasn't maybe this kind of possibilities. But when I use Instagram, even I can find some art lovers from Chile or Brazil or even Japan. This internet is breaking all kind of borders, and this is what I like.
It's brilliant, actually. There are no borders, as you say, Deniz. But times have become visual. You talked about you've got many doors you can open. Tell us a little bit more about these doors you have.
For example, I'm not only doing painting. One of door is creating some art events like Fanzinist Vienna Art Book and Zine Fair. Also in Istanbul, I organize Open Studio Days Istanbul. Yeah, both of organizations are based on DIY ethics, and we are just keep going on with solidarity. As much as possible, we get some help from our artist friends. That's kind of doors that I have.
This latest event in Vienna, could you tell us what it's called again, but slowly and clearly, because I didn't quite understand it.
Yeah, right. First of all, I would like to explain what is fanzine, for example, because most of people doesn't know this term, and then this publication form will be more clear for everyone. A zine is self-published work that typically contains original or borrowed content and including both text and images. So these works are usually reproduced using a copy machine and are circulated among a small audience. Yeah, mostly zines are printed by photocopy, but sometimes we just see some zine and fanzines are printed by Riso or silk screen. So it's one of the easy and cheap publication medium. We will be organizing a fair about that type of publication. Fanzinist Vienna is an annual independent publisher event that takes place in Vienna, Austria. It's focused on showcasing self-published publications on independent works in the fields of art, design, literature, culture, and more. As much as possible, we are just trying to provide a platform for artists, writers, and publishers.
So your It sounds very, very exciting. It seems to me you're taking the message back to the basics. Before internet, people would distribute leaflets, pamphlets, and all these things like this. Is this really what you're after?
Yeah, right. For example, even when we looked through to history, even Benjamin Franklin was making one of the first zine in this world, because in Philadelphia hospital, he just decided to make one of publication with the people from the hospital, and mostly in this zine scene, they say that Benjamin Franklin made the first zine of this world. But actually, of course, when we dig that history, we can find more and more independent publications. For example, in Russia, there was Samizdat culture. Samizdat was quite close to zines as a form. This independent publication is really a big topic.
A big topic. I can understand that fully. Can anybody join in with your zines fair? Can we call it that, maybe?
Yeah, right. Everybody can just visit this event. Also, we are open to get applications from artists and designers, writers who makes zines. And everybody can make zines and art books. It's quite easy. It's not complicated to produce. So yeah, we are just inviting to everybody to make zines and fanzines.
Fanzines, you said. Oh, I didn't catch the fanzines. How do I fanzine or a fanzines? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, I can try to tell the differences between zine and fanzine. Fanzine comes from Fanatic magazine. In 1930, the first zine people started to make some science fiction fanzines. They were quite fanatic about science fiction. So that's why they called these magazines as a fanzine. And then there was going to be some people who really liked some bands, who really liked some sports team, and they just created some fan-based publications. But also there is zines, and zines doesn't have a fan issue. It can be about everything. For example, I do a zine called Hate Be Fanzine. Our zine is about art, photography, and politics and humor. So as much as possible, we are trying to jump some different kind of topics on our publication. So that's why we called zine.
It's quite incredible. A zine is a self-published work, and you distribute it by passing it around friends, I would imagine. How many copies, how many copies has an average zine? 100, 200? Or?
Yeah, I would like to tell my story about this copy number. So in the beginning, we just started to print only 20 copy, and then it was directly ran out, and we were just doing that distribution by ourselves. We were going to lots of bookstores, lots of art galleries, and making that distribution. And year by year, we started to make 100 copy, and then 500 copy, and nowadays I just make more than 1,000 copy for our fanzine. But of course, mostly when we look at this zine scene, people just produce let's say 10 between maximum 200 or 300 copies.
How about finance, Deniz? How do you finance this? Because 1,000 copies cost quite a lot of money I suppose. Is it possible to live off this, or must you do something else as well?
Of course, you cannot live with this kind of publication producing. We are just figuring out that finance issue by ourselves as much as possible. But of course, this finance a bit helps for future printing and for future distribution as much as possible. We try to make solidarity from zine scene who are from some different countries. So that's why we can make, for example, our zines distribution to 8 different countries like Brazil, Canada, Germany, Spain, Italy, Greece. So there is a big zine scene, and we can directly see the solidarity on this scene.
You mentioned all of these countries where you distribute is a word, I suppose. What language is the dominant language in zines, except pictures, of course?
Of course, English is dominating this zine world as a language. For example, for our zine, we use Turkish and English. Also, we published several issues in German. But as much as possible, we try to use 2 different languages, like English and Turkish, for Hate Fanzine.
Okay, or Spanish, English. It depends where you're distributing it. I know it's not really internet, but have you got a homepage where people can actually check this out, so maybe they can produce or get involved in this zines scene?
Sure, right. For example, they can just visit fanzinist.com. On our website, there are several examples about zines. Also, they can check out our website called hatebefanzin.limitedrun.com. There are many zines, and people can just have from that website. We have some digital zines and physical zines, so it doesn't matter where you are. Even you can order a digital zine, and you can easily download from your computer.
How incredible. So it's not just bits of paper and copying, it actually is digital too. Do you have audio zines, like interviews or...
I never did before, but that's a good idea, and we can think about it. But of course, there are some other zinesters who make some audio zines, and even they were just making some records and putting that records on their publication, and they were distributing their podcasts through their zines.
So zines covers everything, really.
Yeah, right.
But by the way, I'll put these internet addresses on our podcast, talk49.co, so anybody can just reference that and get these things. So this is what you're doing now, Deniz, this zine scene. But what is your mainstream art? You know, the stuff that brings in the bread and butter.
Yeah, I'm working for an art gallery, Walmart Art Gallery. So I'm a culture manager, but also as I told you before, I'm a painter. So as much as possible, I'm trying to produce my art. I make lots of events for our art gallery. So
okay, Deniz, but you're a painter. Just tell us briefly, what kind of paintings, what is your style when you're painting?
Sure. I make like pop art and street art style paintings. So I'm just combining that type of styles. And as much as possible, I use humor, politics, and I try to share some details of this life and absurdity of this world. Yeah, there are many topics that I interest. And also, I'm keep going on to drawing non-stop since 2019. So every day I just make, for example, minimum 1 drawing. This is my personal habit to produce every day.
You mentioned humor, Deniz. Why is humor so important, especially now?
I was growing up with humor magazines. When I was 6 or 7 years old, I was just buying some humor magazines in Turkey, and I just discovered another kind of words. It was quite fantastic to see some comics and some caricature. I found myself to make that type of lines, that type of comics. So maybe that's why I just started to study in Fine Arts Academy. Also, we really need this type of humor production for resistance, for the contemporary era.
Explain that just a little bit more. Resistance, why resistance?
Yeah, there are many leaders who are trying to control the world from a bad perspective. and we need to create some contrary manner to their existence with humor. So humor can be a great tool to give answer, to defend ourselves. So that's why humor is brilliant form for me.
Deniz, please excuse me. Humour is the most powerful thing in the world. So, on that note, humour, it's all about humour. Deniz Beser, thank you very, very much for coming to talk to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Talk 49. Talk 49. 49. 49.